I wonder. Okay, so we're starting the episode now. So for the listeners, so Travis and I, so we're back with Travis. I'm going to be a little professional right here. We're back with Travis Parker, episode 2. Okay, so Travis and I are just riffing here, and we're wondering how, like, the pros in radio actually do it. Like Howard Stern. Is Howard Stern really prepared for every episode? I doubt it.
I don't think they are. I think that they probably have topics and sort of direction, and then whether they get to half of those topics or not, it starts with the first one, maybe.
Totally. And then
unless they start pulling things in like we did.
Through.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, which is why it's so wonderful, right? You're just seeing their personalities. It's candid.
That's right. See, the audience likes that. Yeah, that's right. They're clapping for you, Travis. They're clapping for you.
Wow.
So,
the show's improving.
Listeners, the show is improving. We have sound clips that we can use. That's right. That wasn't very funny, but people are laughing anyway. And I am yet not adept enough to use these clips. So the listeners are simply going to have to bear it through a series of episodes while I learn how to use these clips.
Now, audience, thank you. How are these clips cued? Like, do you have little buttons on your computer and it says what the thing is? Or do you have to remember that this one is laughter and this one is like booze?
No, it's dummy proof. It is on my screen right now as we're recording, and it's in these very large buttons that are color coded and have the description, written description of what it is. So there's cheering, there's drum roll, there's clapping, there's drum joke. So in other words, Travis, if you say something during this episode that's funny, yeah. Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, I see, I just screwed up. So I hit the drum joke button, but I had the volume turned down because I faded out the cheering from the last time. See, one. Yeah. So here we go. Okay, so see, there's the drum joke.
And now the applause, and then the applause go wild, right? The fans go crazy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I can turn it up, and I can turn it down. See, and because I like to fade it out. Now the cheering is 40 seconds long. So of course our listeners do not want to hear 40 seconds cheering. So I have to fade out the cheering. And this is just part of the learning curve that I as host need to get up to speed on.
Yeah, of all the things that you need to learn right now in your life, this is the main one, right?
Exactly.
Of all the things troubling you in your empire, Eric, here's where you're at.
I gotta learn. I gotta learn
applause and drum rolls.
Yeah, well, this is part of being a podcast. Now, Howard Stern has someone. What is it? Robin. I think it's right. Like, I don't watch Howard Stern, so I'm going to get seen. But I'm sure he has a producer who sits in a room and does nothing but cue these things. Maybe I need to task Donovan with that.
Yeah, that is absolutely, because Donovan doesn't have enough jobs either. That's a perfect job for Donovan.
That's right.
Actually, he's like, Travis, we will never have you on the show again. Don't solidify this with Eric.
That's right. There we go. After we're done, I'm going to go in there and talk to Donovan. Okay, Travis, on the previous episode, we talked about your story, how you laid the foundations of the career that you've built. You're doing very interesting things. You don't have a normal career as a hairdresser and educator. For example, you're doing productions for huge companies. That was something that just kind of fell into your lap, kind of an opportunity that you grabbed and that you've run with. And so you've kind of been forced into professionalizing on the production side of things. You also have a salon. And you have an academy. One thing that we didn't talk a lot about on episode 1 is the academy. So why don't we start with that? Tell us about when you started with it. What's the format?
I tell you what, this is everything in my life right now. As much as the other things are 2 other companies that I'm running, this is my baby right here. This started 7 years ago with its conception. I started writing the content 7 years ago of what I thought would simplify the process of teaching and learning cutting hair. Being a nerd.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there because 7 years ago was kind of before this latest wave of educational content, right? The digitization of education in our industry, especially COVID. It accelerated through COVID. So we're going back before all that. Yeah. 7 years ago was kind of when I think most of the hair education was still somebody comes into your salon and does it. So what was the impetus for you starting?
It's a valid question. There's a lot to that answer. First of all, I've always been intrigued with virtual reality and augmented reality, and I've always wanted to build content that had that as an interface so that we could learn remotely in these sort of ways. That's always been sort of a driving interest of mine well back from like the early 90s. I was actually doing renderings on my computer of what an iPad or Apple Newton at the time could do, and before the iPad even had come out. So there was a lot of interest inside of me to elevate the way that we taught cutting hair altogether. I felt that we were antiquated in the way, not as far as what our lessons were, but we were antiquated in the way that they were being driven to a modern audience. And so 7 years ago, I thought, how could I develop content that wasn't antiquated before I finished the process, because trends are flipping so quickly now, and micro trends are really more common than trends. How could I put all this together and stay relevant by the back end of it, and then utilize it for X amount of moments in my life? And so it was very clear to me at that time that I needed to build timeless content. And so that was a matter of, writing what I've come up with, Hairdressing Made Easy, as I mentioned before, a system on teaching and cutting hair. I knew that if I could build the content to film it, that we could make money on self-paced versions of this. And that would be wonderful for cosmetology school students. That'd be wonderful for anybody that's got a crazy schedule. We could start to certify people under the methodology in sort of pre-recorded videos. And it was stuff that I was wanting to do from the very beginning. And I knew that before I spent the money on filming it, I needed to bulletproof the content. So 6 years ago, we started teaching it in person and trying to debunk it. And I invited a number of friends in that are huge influencers in the industry and big names behind scissors, and just names behind the chair, moments behind the mission itself. And I started getting people in to see if it worked, to see if it could be debunked, to see if it was shit. And we went through numbers of evolutions. So there was probably about 15, 20 different evolutions to it. To get us to a place where in 2019, we decided that we were going to finally film it. And in 2019, I hired a videography company, and things went, I think we were talking about in the last episode, but things went awry with that team, and we ended up with a lot of raw content that was unfinished. Then 2020 happened. And so all of this was happening before 2020. The hard part was that nothing ever happens on the timeline that you want it to, as you know. And if it does, you're like, oh my God, we planned this date and it actually happened. Like, that's crazy. And
I'm not prepared. We planned the date, but I'm not prepared.
Look, we budgeted the exact right amount of money and it happened on time. Like, if that's ever happened in an entrepreneur's life, I'd say they're probably not a real person. And so, perfect world, I would have had it ready for 2020 and we would have smashed it in 2020, but that wasn't my calling. And my calling in 2020 was to figure out how I was going to reconcile that reality. And that's when I started putting together my own production company to be able to finish what we had started with the other group and do it in a sense of budget that I could afford to complete it. And so, that's kind of how we got ahead of digital content was, we wanted to do it from the very beginning, but instead of doing trend-based content that I could immediately just start videoing or filming, and then it would be, again, antiquated before I was even done with it, I knew that I had to approach it in a different way. And in order for us to have a sustainable company that would be here tomorrow, we had to build DNA. We had to build a methodology that everything else that came from it would all be stabilized, being that we have the structured foundation. And that's exactly what we've got. I mean, now at this point, the world's our oyster, and it's a matter of just, how much we can get done and produce and make smart choices and market it correctly so it gets to the eyes and the ears of the people that need it and help people. So
there's so much there. The first thing that strikes me is your process of actually getting the content and getting things up and going, it takes so long, and it rarely works the way you want. So you spent money on another production team, and you got all this raw footage, and unfortunately it's not usable. And that to me is just, that's so starting your business, right? The starting business right there. It's just
$150K in the can, just waiting for somebody to come with a match and light it. I just can't do it yet. It's just still sitting there. It's unusable. It sucks. It's the worst.
Unbelievable. $150,000. So these are the trials and travails of starting a business nobody ever understands. Everybody always sees the success story, and they're like, oh, that guy's so lucky and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But it rarely happens that way. So here you are.
I'm not even sure how to define luck at this place in my career. Do you know how to define luck? I'm like, is that luck, or did I just work really hard and now this is happening at some place in my life? You know what I mean? I don't know how much is luck anymore. It's a word of humility, I should say, from somebody that's successful.
It is a subjective word too. It means different things to different people. And so you and I would probably define it the same way, and that's one reason I hate the question, is your success, or is success in general, due more to talent or luck, right? And I often, and you see a lot of people give, a lot of famous successful people like, an Elon Musk or a Warren Buffett, or, that kind of famous, say these glib answers like, oh, it's all luck. And, because it sounds humble, and they sound, like humility, which is an attractive thing for people to listen to. But I think the reality is, and they would probably tell you if you're sitting down and having a beer privately with them, that it wasn't luck at all. It was, and it maybe not even talent, it was simply the sheer effort behind it over many, many, many years, accumulated such that when opportunities came, they were prepared to take advantage of them.
Exactly. That's exceptionally well said. Yes.
Thanks. It's not like I haven't thought of that before. I just came up with that off the cuff. But so rarely,
as we've been wondering, right? Yeah.
Right. So rarely in these little interviews that are on TV do they actually say that. But I firmly believe that that's what they firmly believe. Anyway, so your story is very similar to that. Okay, so
I'd say, in summary, luck is unsustainable, right? So what we're trying to find is sustainability in our behavior, so we can find predictability in our product and profitability. And that probably summarizes, I'd say, where we're at with luck, and playing back into what I'm about to say. Yeah.
Totally agree. And when I've gone deep on this topic in the past, maybe to the detriment of the show, because I don't know if when I get philosophical like this, the listeners, I don't know if you guys like this or if this is nauseating to you and you turn us off at this time. But I'm going to say something I haven't said before on this topic. I'm reminded of a time when I went on a surf trip with some friends, and one of my friends had been struggling in life through a period of the time that I've known him, many, many years. And I always kind of wondered, why is John, making up the name, why is John never finding success? He's always struggling. And I'll never forget one specific time. It was like a Sunday morning. We were in El Salvador, and we were with like 4 guys. And we had driven a long time through the jungle. I'm not making this up. I used to do this kind of stuff before I got married. We were driving through the jungle looking for good surf. And now and then, about every 20 minutes, we drive a little farther, and then we get off the dirt road and head towards the beach and drive out on the beach and look at the surf. And is it good? Is it not good? We don't know. And one morning, we happened upon this surf spot, and it was absolutely epic. It was the best surf that I had ever seen in my life. And it was one of those moments that a surfer dreams about. Wow, we finally scored. We're in the middle of nowhere, paradise, perfect waves, not one other human out there in the water, and we have it all to ourselves. And it was a particular kind of wave that is perfect for my friend John. And so I looked at John, and I'm like, dude, how excited are you right now? Like, epic wave. It's a left. It's barreling. It's perfect for you as a goofy foot surfer. This is the kind of stuff that you always dream about. And he wasn't very excited. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? This is your dream right here. More your dream than my dream, because this kind of wave is hard for me. It's easier for you. And he just wasn't, quote, feeling it. He wasn't feeling it. And I remember thinking, you're not feeling it. Get off your fucking ass and start feeling it, because this right now is the opportunity that you've been dreaming about for years. So start freaking feeling it, right? And I will never forget that basically, boiling it down, the perfect opportunity, he had finally had the perfect opportunity. It had come to him, but he wasn't prepared for it. He wasn't prepared for it emotionally or mentally or whatever, physically. Maybe he drank too much the night before or whatever. And he was incapable of meeting the opportunity in the moment. And that, to me, I think is a pretty good metaphor for life, because you can't control when the opportunities come. What you can control is being prepared for when the opportunity comes. And the people who are successful are the ones who are prepared when those opportunity comes. It's not luck. So
I appreciate that. No, I think that so many of us go into an autopilot too. Like when we are miserable and we're in a place of funk, something successful is going to challenge us in a sense of like, okay, are we ready to start taking the responsibility that comes with that success? You know what I mean? Right now, I might be a shithead and I'm miserable and I'm complaining all the time, but I'm familiar with it. And so when something does present itself that all of a sudden is a door to walk into something new, you're like, I might be miserable, but I'm comfortable here. And a lot of us go through life in that sense, chapter upon chapter upon chapter. But the bottom line is that anytime you're growing, it's going to be unfamiliar, and you got to take that step. And, if you don't take it today, it's okay. There's going to be another door. But yeah, hopefully John, when he sees his wave next time, he'll actually ride it and then see where that wave leads him. And it may just lead him to the other side. In every metaphorical sense.
And everything
and literal,
you just said
actually.
everything you just said is what I feel on a daily basis. I don't drive to the office comfortable every day. I have a series of things that I need to do today. One of them talking to you. And as fun as it is right now, when I'm driving to the office, I'm worried that I don't have the best questions for Travis Parker today. And that is a little bit of a burden. There are other things that I have to do today that I'm a little worried about. Things could fall off the rails. There are more problems that can come if I don't do a great job, or something I don't understand or know about. And that's an everyday thing. And so I think you hit on something. Hopefully the listeners are in the pocket with us on this philosophy. But if not, let's kind of move on to the next thing. So
I love the life lessons, though. I mean, these are the things that do lead us to success. We'll talk about the details, but yeah, just anchoring that, Eric. I mean, without those ingredients, you wouldn't have accomplished, what you've accomplished. You wouldn't be who you are. And being vulnerable is always part of our process of developing. That's how we can allow ourselves to see something different, to see something through a new set of lenses. You know what I mean? To absorb it, to take it in. It's also part of our humility as well. They're going crazy. They loved it. We thought we were losing them. We thought we were losing them.
Exactly, but we're not losing them. We're not losing them. They're right here in the pocket with us. No, I think that's absolutely great. I think it's great. And the self-sabotage comes to mind. I know people who self-sabotage. Maybe John wasn't feeling it that day because he saw the wave and he thought he knows down deep that this is his dream and he's afraid of screwing it up. So he didn't even want to go out there and try. I know that people do that. And so I think you're a good one to have this conversation with, because you're doing all these interesting things in the industry And I know that a lot of our listeners, as they go through their careers, they think, should I be an educator? Should I open a studio or a salon? Should I do this? Should I do that? And so I like to talk to people about you, like you, who have done these things. And look, you're not going to feel comfortable every time. Like I just said, that's hopefully me saying it's not comfortable for me every single day is of some value to people. So they don't feel like everything has to be perfect for them to actually start something. You talk about your education thing. You went through $150,000. That was, I'm sure, a very uncomfortable thing for you. And I'm sure as you do what you do on a daily basis, there's a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
But that's just part of the process.
Well, dude, I don't know how everybody else feels. I don't know how you feel. I mean, you're pinging off your drive to work this morning. I'm in the same place. I don't do anything unless I can do it to the best of my ability. I'm going to opt out if I have a choice, if I can't go all in. And that's just in my nature. That's how I sort of have run my life. And that's how I play it into everything I do, from being a dad to being a teacher to being a hairdresser to being a friend to whatever it is. That's sort of where I'm at. So, with that said, that comes with a sense of pressure as well, because you're always trying to elevate. And if you come from a mindset that you never stop learning, that at every level you're developing more, then it's, you're having to deal with discomfort on a daily level. So how do you get to a place of romancing with discomfort? How do you get to a place where instead of it repelling you, it actually excites you? And I think that that's a good thing for listeners to think about as well, is that, right now, over the last 3 days, I've been working on writing code and SEO descriptions for every single asset on my webpage, because I ran out of money when we developed our website, and I didn't have the money to pay an SEO team $30,000 to embed all these SEO into my website. So what did I teach myself? I used ChatGPT and AI and all kinds of other stuff to figure out exactly what the best approach would be for me to embed SEO into my website. So I was more popular, or I was populating more in websites. Well, to be honest, 4 days ago, I'd never even done any of that. Like, I didn't know one thing about writing code aside from looking at it and sort of going, oh, that looks hard. But to the point is that now the next time I am working on a website, I now know how to get through that. I now know how to do that. And was it uncomfortable? Yeah, it was uncomfortable. Was it written in a language that is well over my head and pay grade? 1,000 feet over my head and pay grade.
Yeah.
But, it's allowing me to grow. It's allowing me to develop. So the money I lost on something else, now I'm saving money on something else because I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to be mortal. I'm willing to grow. And that's my everyday. Like, I can't think of many days behind me where I haven't been uncomfortable on any given day. Now, that's not to say that I don't find, peace in my life. I don't find balance in my life. All of those things I do. Peace is a consistent thing. Balance is a conditional thing. You know what I mean? But discomfort is part of development, and development is why I do what I do, or else I wouldn't do it at all.
Yeah. I think what repels most people from what we're talking about is the fear of failure. They cannot bear the sense that they have failed at something.
Why do you think that?
What's that?
Why do you think that? Why do you think we're so afraid of failure? Like, we all know it. We practice the mantras, but yet we don't. Like, why do you think we're so afraid to fail?
Well, I think it boils down to kind of people's maybe insecurities. They're maybe insecure to the extent that they couldn't handle the idea that they've failed at something, because that would be debilitating to them. That's my guess. I fear failure at a certain level, but on a daily basis, I don't. Like, if I don't ask you all of the perfect questions, that's not a fear of mine. If I get to the end of this interview and I think, and we part ways, and 10 minutes later I'm like, shit, I should have asked him XYZ. all I do is I go into my notes and I write that down. And of course, over the last 5 years, this has happened over and over and over and over and over again. So I now have all these questions written down. I have my favorite questions. I have a series of questions that I ask different kinds of guests. And then that's just the process of getting better. And then I don't beat myself up if I don't do something perfectly.
Love that. Well, and what defines perfectly is a subjective answer as well, right? We're defining failure ourselves. We ourselves are defining failure, and then we're defining success. All of these answers are all self-driven, and yet we're all in control at the same time. I guess hence the whole conversation.
I think most people's insecurity has them defaulting to the worst possible of any particular set of thinking. Whether it's the how did I do in the interview or the, did I handle something right? I think a lot of people's fear and anxiety just has them defaulting to the worst. And I think that just needs to consciously be corrected. And it's not hard. I'm sorry, it's not easy. Yeah. It's hard. And I'm not sure everybody has practiced it enough to fix that in their nature. I think that's human nature. It's that whole amygdala thing that we talk about now and then. And it just has us kind of thinking the worst in many scenarios. So I don't know. Hopefully that was of some value to the listeners. But
well, you're gonna fail more than you're gonna succeed by 1,000,000. So I mean, we kind of have to find what we need to find comfortability with it. Quick quote, and I'll let you move on, Eric. I'm sorry. I heard something about a year ago, and it was. Do you know who has missed the most free throws in basketball? And of course Michael Jordan, right? I have no idea. And they go, no, Kobe Bryant. And they go, well, do you know who's made more free throws than anybody in basketball? And I'm like, no. And they're like, well, Kobe Bryant. And you're like, oh, shit. And the bottom line is that you're going to have moments of success. As a matter of fact, depending upon how much you're practicing, you're going to have a lot more moments of success if you practice more. But between every moment of success is all the failures that lead you to that moment of success. You're going to have 10 failures to every one success over and over and over again throughout life if you're doing new things and if you're growing. So, yeah, totally. I probably said that stat probably completely wrong. Use the wrong player because I don't watch basketball. But yeah, I think it's a great thing for us to recognize because we have to find our romance again with it. We have to find our comfortability in it in order for it to happen, in order for success to be found sustainably.
And so maybe how we incorporate that little lesson into our daily lives is next time we find ourselves pulling back on maybe trying something that we want to try because our fear of failure, we simply think to ourselves, was Kobe Bryant afraid to shoot a free throw? No, he wasn't afraid to shoot the free throw. He had a positive mindset. He was thinking about making them, and he wasn't worried about all the misses.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us more about your platform. You told the listeners what it's called. What is it called again?
So our brand is called Travis Parker Hairdresser. Our methodology of hair cutting is called Hairdressing Made Easy. And Hairdressing Made Easy in our certification courses is comprised of 3 different courses: Cutting Course 1, Cutting Course 2, Cutting Course 3. And
how long
that
are they
gives
each?
you. I'm sorry?
How long are they each?
So in person, each one is 2 days. The Cutting Course 1 class is 6 cuts altogether in person. Cutting Course 2 is 6 cuts altogether in person, and 4 cuts in Cutting Course 3 in person. Online, they take place over 4 days, so we split the days in half, basically, just to give us more bandwidth online as things happen when we're online in general. So our attention spans fade. It's just a bit harder for our attention spans, period. So we divide our online trainings, and then we have a trend-based collection of haircuts called the Cutting Edge Membership. And that is me scouring over the internet to find the most popping cuts and relevant cuts and using our methodology and the verbiage as means of example to break down these cuts. And that launches a haircut every other week. We have a 30th haircut coming out on the 1st of April. We've been working just about a year on that. I think I'm about 11 months into it right now. And then we are finishing, not finishing, we're about 80% through a huge new package that we're building of 30 tutorial videos, 20 different haircuts of short category, medium length category, long category, and a category we're calling bread and butter. And we have 5 cuts per one of those categories, so 20 cuts in there. And then we have another 10 to, I think, 15 different caveat videos that we're doing on finding more money as a hair cutter, client consultation and connectivity, interpersonal relationships between you and your client, how to market yourself and brand yourself, thinking of yourself as a brand, positioning yourself in social media. Scissors, video on tools, how to hold your tools, all this different stuff, and it's basically a master series that we're collecting and putting together that will basically be giving the farm away for so cheap that you would almost feel silly passing it up. And we're putting that out we're shooting for May. We got a trade show that we're going to be at, and so we're trying to target that trade show for a launch date of this collection. And
which show?
The CT Barber Show, Barber Expo. Okay. CT Barber Expo. Sometime in May, I forget exactly when it is, and that'll be the first trade show that we're ever doing as an academy. So I've got a booth, and we're going to be doing some haircuts, and I'm going to be on the stage of a couple other companies that have asked me to do that while I'm there. And we got some friends out there doing some podcasts, so we're going to jump into some interviews while we're out there too. But yeah, that's kind of what we're working on, and that's our digital platform right now. And the website's totally coming together. It's a website that's built on what's called LMS, which is a learning module software website base, which allows us to put our students through curated experiences as they're watching the videos. So we have the ability to stop you in the middle of a video, ask you a couple questions, and then it unlocks the next portion of the video, and it allows us to create this tailored experience for the student that is watching it online and self-paced.
Wow, that's kind of amazing. So comprehensive. I mean, I'm still back at a new haircut every other week. Like that's Dude, crazy.
It's so much work. It's so much work. It's a lot of work.
God.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
That's insanity. So you find the new cut, and you have to. Maybe as an educator, it's really easy for you to recognize how to do the cut. Maybe not. I don't. Maybe it's a lot of work to find the best way to teach the cut, and then you actually have to record and produce and release that content. That's a crazy amount of work.
Yeah, the workflow and turnarounds for real.
Wow. Okay. So would you say that this thing is? Is this for? Students? Is this for experienced hairdressers? What would you say?
Yeah, the membership, the cutting edge membership, is for everyone. What it's really beautiful for is for salons and teams. So think about this: if you had a salon and you had 5 people in your salon, 20 people in your salon, and every single person in that salon was getting a tutorial haircut that was trending, a haircut that they're seeing on their social media platform already. And everyone's getting it every other week with the same instruction, with the same verbiage, with the same sense of application and way of breaking it down over and over and over again. So the messenger is an easier voice to hear. And everybody on your team is getting that every other week. Think about where your team would be. That consistent feed of methodology, that consistent feed of approaching haircuts. And it's not to say that you're going to want to cut every single haircut on your client, but the ingredients of it teach you a million other haircuts. Mm-hmm. And to your point, the hardest part of it all is finding the next haircut, because I'm not an early adapter. I'm a 51-year-old man that is building businesses. You know what I mean? I'm not hanging out at bars and clubs with my young friends and seeing who's got the most cool haircut. I'm just not that age anymore. So I think the hardest thing for me is to find the consistent look that is that micro trend at the moment. The development of the content is the easiest part because it's our methodology. So, we have an approach that we say that every haircut on the planet is comprised of the 3 basic elements: length, layers, and face framing. So every single haircut I start with, the length of this haircut is X, Y, and Z. The layers in this haircut are, A, B, and C. And the face framing in this haircut is, LMO, and then we start breaking that down based upon, again, the principles of our methodology. And so it's really simple to hear. The sectioning patterns you're familiar with. And again, everything's rather straightforward. So that's the easiest part. The hard part is, again, figuring out what the cut's going to be. And then there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into the process of, as you said, post. You got to film, or first you got to film it. But then post, you got to get through all of your edits. We use 2 cameras, so we shoot in a wide and a close up. So it's constantly popping back and forth between seeing the entire me and the entire head, and then coming up in a close up, which has got the head just totally zoomed in, and my hands are as big as a screen, and you're right in there. It's POV to no end, and then we put animation into it that. Yeah.
For those who don't know what POV is.
And then, thank you. And then we throw in all of our lower thirds, which is the animation that tells you, what the length is and some of the ingredients of that length when it's happening. And the B-roll that we throw in on the front end and the back end, which is us, when I'm talking about certain things, then B-roll's rolling over it so you can see what I'm talking about, and all that. On the back end with editing is a process. Then we have to write the course description, and then we've got to write, all the variables that go in with that. This is at X amount of inches, that's at X amount of inches, and then we've got to upload that to the actual website, and then we got to upload all the copy and the content to it. Then we've got to post that to the bundled package it lives in. Then we got to send out the a mailer that goes out to everybody to remind them that it's happening, and
market it.
And then you're starting the next cut, and then you're like, wow. Yeah. Did we just do one and finish one? And like, whoa. And then people are like, I'll run into people and they're like, oh my God, dude, the Bixie that you did was so dope. Like, what did you mean? Or like, what'd you do when, like, how'd you do this part or whatever else? And I'm like, I don't remember doing it.
That's really funny.
I'm like, wait, let me watch that video and I'll get back to you. Because the consistent churn around on it is so rapid that there really isn't time for me to digest it. But at the same time, it's a really incredible example of how wonderful the methodology is and how applicable it is to regardless of what's happening.
What makes a good, or let me ask the question this way. What's the difference between a good and a bad educator?
I think, that's a tough question. I don't ever want to say somebody's bad, right? That's what I'm struggling over with my words.
Oh, there's bad educators out there. I mean, really let's just be. I'll sound like the asshole.
I think.
I mean, you hear hairdressers all the time saying, "Oh, that guy thinks he's a good educator just because he has a big following on Instagram," but I didn't learn anything. Yeah. So there's bad educators out there. What's the difference?
I think that it's a wonderful question, and I'll start with this. I think what I define as a good educator is somebody that not only understands their why of what they're doing, but they're very concise and clear on explaining it, and then positioning it in such a way that I can start to form my way just by watching and hearing them. And what a bad example would be is pushing artistry and pushing ego. And when you're just pushing energy out from your ego and you're just putting out what aesthetically has made you cool, there's no lesson in that. We already can see that you're cool. So you don't have to tell us you're cool, because there's truly nothing less appealing to hear than somebody telling us how cool they are when we already know they're cool. Now we're just thinking they're a tool at that point. So they've gone from cool to a tool by trying to just tell us who they are, or who they wish they were. So yeah, I think if we can find, as a teacher, if we can find experiences that allow us to have a point of view upon a subject matter and define the why we've come to that place, I think that those are easy words to listen to, and that is, for a teacher, something that's easy for a student to grow from. The other thing is that it's a job, and so when we're thinking about becoming an educator, it's not about just going out and telling people what you're doing. It's a career, it's a job, and people go to college to become facilitators and educators, which means there's a little bit more to it than just winging your coolness. And so, format-wise, how do you structure your hands-on classes versus your demonstration classes? How do you format your classes that are both? How do you format classes that have models versus mannequins? How do you format classes that have both? How are your communication skills with the salon that you're going to work at, or the company that is building, or the company that's booking you? How clear are you with your communication to understand what their needs are, what their wants are, where they're coming from, and where they're going, so that you as a third party can come in and really natively fit right in there and continue to push upon what their developments are. When it comes to a facilitator, it comes to a sense of humility, and it comes to a sense of formatting your personality in front of an audience, because again, it's not about you. I think one of the biggest epiphanies I had as a teacher was realizing that I wasn't the chosen one. I was just chose to be the one to get in front of others to enlighten them. But it was not about me, it was about them. And so when I was in my head and I was a nervous shithead and I was anxious and I was this and I was overthinking things, what was I thinking about as a teacher? I was thinking about myself. And so for me as a teacher, that is not a teacher. My job is to think about them. So what am I doing in the sense of humility to prepare myself to deliver a message that they can grow alive from?
For the listeners, Travis he raised his arms and dropped the pen on his desk.
Which that's was my hypothetical mic.
That was the podcast version of a mic. There it was. So
speaking of tools, right? Good. What a tool.
No. You dropped it with humility. You dropped it. So you just answered my next 4 questions essentially in that one answer. No, it's great. That's the way to. From my perspective, the difficulty in being a good educator is being a master of one's subject matter, craft, and being able to see things out of the lens of the beginner. And to span that entire gulf between beginner and master, with your, maybe your empathy, you can see things through the lens of somebody who's just beginning, and then they can bridge that gulf and speak the language of that beginner. And I think that's a difficult thing. So thank you. And I think some people say, well, anyone can be an educator, you just learn. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't consider myself an educator, but I think that the best educators are able to do that. And that's maybe why not everyone is the best.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, well, we're always talking about the 1%, right? And so what does a 1% do? 1% stand out, 1% this, 1% that. Well, the rest is the 99%. And what does that 1% do? And you start understanding that. And I think you come to a lot of these conversations that we're having right now. These are the ingredients. No secrets, no magic.
You boil it down brilliantly when you said, I had said brilliantly. That was quite a compliment for you, wasn't it? So you said it brilliantly when you said that a bad educator you defined as somebody who's up there essentially thinking about themselves, whether it's trying to project their own ego and their own coolness in the hopes that what the result of the education is that people think that they're cooler than maybe when they first walked into the room. That's a bad educator, and that's an educator who's thinking first and foremost of themselves versus an educator who is thinking about them, the students, so they can deliver the best kind of experience so that the student learns the most. And I think it sounds like you learned that over time. Early on, you were thinking about yourself, and then you evolved and got better and better as an educator, right?
100%. I mean, I thought I had to be the smartest person in the room to be the one in front of the room, and
maybe show the students that you were the smartest. Make sure that they knew that you were the smartest one in the room.
Well, and that was my insecurity, right? Because I thought I was supposed to be the smartest, I faked being the smartest. Well, guess how dumb I sounded. I sounded like an idiot. I probably is the wrong word. I would make up words to try to sound smart. And then after I would do a certain class, I'd be like, I just literally made up 10 words to try to sound smart. I am such an idiot. Yeah, and I think that the big breakthrough is that, again, you start to realize that, if you want to define happiness, make it less about you, period, in every sense of application, period. You keep focusing on yourself to try to find your happiness, and as soon as you redirect that energy, I guarantee you, your heart will start to fill up. It's crazy. And even down to being a great facilitator and getting in front of other human beings. My means of inspiration is being a haircutting teacher. You know what I mean? That's why I'm out there. But while I have that opportunity and while I'm blessed to be in front of others, what can I do? How can I impact people's lives? How can I share with people the 35 years that I have now behind the chair and the 51 years that I have on the planet, and hopefully give the right words or put out the right words that give somebody what they need to hear to make that next step in their life. So yeah, as means of inspiration, I get to cut hair in front of other people and hopefully share with them cool haircuts and how to do it, and so they can find their why in it. But most importantly, and I think you know this too, Eric, the moments that light us all up are the moments when somebody comes back and was like, you said this one thing, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I don't remember saying that. They're like, it changed my life. And you're like, oh, dang, that's why I do what I do. Like, that's why I love this. That's why this is my purpose. You know what I mean? And I love that so much.
So what would you say, with all the classes you've been in, all the students that you've dealt with, what are the one or two things that experienced hairdressers struggle with the most?
I think the experienced hairdressers, what we struggle with the most is that we get to a certain place in our career where we've had a tremendous amount of success upon certain disciplines. And then as soon as that discipline, somebody comes along and they say, hey, look, that's a great way to do it, but there's another way to do it. Sometimes when we have 100% confidence in something, we don't like to feel vulnerable anymore. We don't want to feel all thumbs again. And so relearning a process or an alternate way, we become really resistant to it, and we either start to kind of shut it down and go, it's stupid, or like that's not the right way to do it, and and become sort of pigeonholed. So expertise is fantastic and experience is fantastic as long as you come from the mindset and the mind frame that you never stop learning. And as long as you come from the place that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know very much at all. I think that's when we really start to understand what doesn't hold us back as experts and does open it up to really define world class. If I could think of a level above an expert, you know what I mean? And this is just me making things up. But at the same time, when it comes down to it, yeah, I think that it's a fear to not be right that holds us back. It's a fear to not have all the answers already. I'm an expert, so people coming up to me and going, hey, Trav, have you ever thought about doing that bob this way? And it completely is opposite of what I'm doing. In that moment, what happens, right? In that moment, do I go, oh my gosh, that is another way to do it. I've never thought of it that way. That's brilliant. Or do I look at it and be like, well, yeah, you could do it that way, but you're probably not going to find that it's equal on both sides, or that it's level, or you're going to have to worry about your body. And then I'm starting to come up with all this fucking bullshit that has nothing to do with the fact that this person took it into their own hands to be vulnerable and go up to a teacher and say, hey, look, is this cool? Is this another way? Right. You know what I mean? So in that moment as a teacher, how do I handle it? And you said a word called empathy earlier. And I just will stabilize and give you the mic back with that word right there. You have to be an empathetic teacher. It has every bit of relevance to continuing to grow and defining expertise again.
It does. And we'll do another sports analogy. And I know they get nauseating, maybe for people who hate sports right, especially. but John Wooden once said something that I posted on my Instagram. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
Oh, snap.
I'll drop the
that.
mic.
There's the mic drop.
Wait. I'm a little late on my drum roll or my cheering. Hold on. Yeah, there you go.
Just slow broadband. They just got it. So it was just a slow feed. It wasn't your bad.
There you go. So these are all amazing things. Hopefully the listeners are digging it. I want to ask you a question. It's maybe a new question that I've asked a guest. What's your perspective on the state of the industry right now, generally?
Gosh, that's an open question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'll just go with it and tell me if you want to direct this answer in any sense of the way. First of all, I'm in love with our industry. So I will tell you this much. Whenever I look at our industry, I'm going to look at it through those lenses. No matter what, that's just kind of who I am. I wouldn't be in an industry that I didn't love. That would be a pretty poor career to choose. So I will start with saying that. So for all of us to hear this, just in a place of reset, whenever you're starting to position questions like this, just think about what you're doing and how you're starting to position your thoughts, because you start to live your words. I think we're in a phenomenal place of development and growth. And I think we're in a place where we have so much opportunity right now with technology that it literally is incomparable to any other time in history for the hair industry. And I'm not saying that because technology is new. I'm saying that because we are fucking antiquated when it comes to technology in general in our industry. And we have been for the last 30 years that I've been in it, which is why I told you before, I really wanted to get into augmented reality and virtual reality. And it's stuff that I've been working on in behind the scenes within interfacing. And technology just hasn't caught up to my ideas yet. So we haven't been able to do it, nor are my pocketbooks deep enough to be able to fund something that hasn't been already developed yet into the sense of a template-based thing. And so with that said, we're finally at a place right now that I'm elated over where we're finally using technology, and social platforms are the greatest example of what has forced brands to start reporting to a digital reality. And what I mean by that is, like, so many brands were still selling DVDs like 5 years ago. And I'm like, I haven't had a DVD player in 15 years. And you're trying to sell me a DVD right now. Like, you're on cocaine. And so I applaud the fact that we're adapting technology right now, and it's kind of happening because we're being forced to do it because our audience and our demographic is already adaptive to it. And so as brands, we're having to figure out how to position it. But yeah, I applaud the fact that we're finally doing it. And I'm elated over the fact that we finally can use these resources to connect with hairdressers all over the world and vice versa. Like, that's insanity. And I just, to no end, does it stoke me out. Where it can challenge us, and I say this, and I want all ears to hear me on this one, where it can challenge us is the fact that we are getting information in a fragmented sense. Historically, we've learned information from one teacher, two teachers, three teachers throughout our lives that are experts upon a specific subject. We have consistent messaging in that. When we don't have consistent messaging, we have the opportunity, not necessarily it's going to happen, but we have the opportunity for there to be a lost message in it. And like I was saying earlier about, I was actually saying this on an earlier podcast, forgive me. So I wasn't saying this earlier, but I was saying it earlier today, just not on this call, forgive me. And so what I was saying is that we're learning in a way that really is patchwork right now. We are learning from this artist, we're learning from this team, we're learning from this educator, we're learning from, whatever. Well, all those different streams of information are fantastic if you're sophisticated enough to defragment it and put it into a system that becomes yours. And a lot of us, when we're young, we're not intelligent upon, I'm not going to say intelligent, we're not experienced upon a subject enough to understand how to defragment that much information and put it into an aligned sense of methodology so that we know where these things live. We know the why in what we're seeing and what we're hearing. And so what we're losing right now is exactly what I'm trying to build, which is why I'm trying to build it, or another big part of it. What we're losing right now is the consistency in understanding how to cut hair and the understanding of how to color hair. And what we're learning is how to do this haircut and how to do that balayage color and how to do those two together. And then when that's not cool anymore, you got this much in your bucket again. So if I can teach you how to color hair, and it's the whole thing of teaching somebody to fish, right? That old saying, if we can teach you how to do it, you're going to see all these things online and you're going to be like, dude, I'll tell you exactly how to approach that. And I know where that lives in my arsenal of thought processes when it comes to approaching hairstyling or hairdressing. And so I think that that's where we're at right now. And I think companies, it's our job to help to find consistency in our messaging. And again, that is another big part of the reason that we built a methodology before we built our trend-based content. We wanted it to belong to something so that people could always find it as a resource to understand what the why and what it was that we were doing. And I think in a lot of ways, that's where we're going to find it as a challenge in our industry right now with continued development of like, are we preparing people to really understand what their career is? And we're defining expertise in a different way right now. Kids are defining expertise themselves. And you can't be a 20-year-old, forgive me for all of you out there between the age of graduating from school and any other age. I'm not even going to put an age on it. You can't call yourself an expert. Eric, you can call me an expert, but I can't call myself an expert.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You're still learning.
When you're a 21-year-old kid and you've been in the industry for 3 months or you haven't worked around any other hairdressers, you aren't necessarily an expert upon anything. You haven't had the experiences to find expertise, and don't gyp yourself of the process that needs to happen in order for you to celebrate expertise. And it's the moments in between that give us the stories. It's the moments in between that acceptance of failure that we were talking about earlier has to happen. And again, that's where I feel that we as an industry might be missing the mark right now, is that I feel that a lot of kids are going to go through, or young hairdressers are going to go through a phase where they're missing the process because they're trying to define the end result without understanding what its ingredients are. And you can't get mom's apple pie by watching a 5-second reel. You can't. It just doesn't happen that way. Yeah. So no, that's my concern, and that's my thought on it. Yeah. Really otherwise, I think we're in a celebrated time of, the wild, wild west is always an opportunity of mishap, but it's always an opportunity for birth. You know what I mean? And we're in a birthing moment Renaissance. Of hopefully the rest of our, I think it's rad.
Absolutely. Do you have any hair horror stories?
So many. Yeah, bro, I'd say back to successes versus failures of a million successes to one failure, right? How do you, if we can think about how I got to cutting
a million
two sides
failures
of
to
a
one
haircut.
Success.
Yeah, I still remember the first haircut. This is crazy. I still remember the first haircut I did in cosmetology school in 1986 or 7. It was a bob. I remember the bob was supposed to be like right here. Oh, for you guys that can't see me right now, the bob was supposed to be at a chin length. And so I cut the right side at the chin length, and then I cut the left side. I'm like, oh, dang, like the left side's slightly at the jaw, not at the chin. And so I was like, okay, well, I got to make it even, right? So then I remember cutting the right side that I started with first, right at the jawline. And then I was like, oh, man, that's kind of in between the cheekbone and the jawline. And then I was like, oh, shit, I got to make that even, right? And so then I tried to cut the others. And Eric, it was as if I got in the shower with my clothes on. I was sweating so much. And I will tell you, I grew up with so much insecurity and so much anxiety. I was literally, I would have rather peeled my skin off and you poured vinegar on my body than like finish that haircut. I was so stressed out. And I called my teacher over, Heather, who was my favorite teacher. She was awesome. And Heather, fortunately, straightened out the haircut. I don't remember one word from the client. I don't remember her being upset or mad. I was so in my own head and so flustered that it could have been a mannequin I was working on, and this whole memory is fake. But I will never forget that tragic moment. And that moment led me to being on stage as a teacher, 20-something years later. And when I was called upon to be a facilitator and I was up on stage, I remember cutting hair crooked on stage. And I was like, well, this is embarrassing. Like, one thing is to cut it, uneven in front of the mirror when there's only one person in the audience or client seeing it. There's another thing when everybody's watching you, to be the expert you are, and you can't define expertise for the life of you because you can't cut two sides even. So I ended up creating this thing called contact points, where for a right-handed cutter, if they cut the left side of their head, they're always entering every section from the right side being a right-handed cutter. So if you cut the left side first, you pull from the left side, you grab an even piece from the right side, you clip the right side, you clip from that, what we call contact point on the right side, to where it meets the left side, and you've got continuity on both sides. And so I created this thing called contact points, which has become one of my biggest things as a teacher in my entire career. And I wrote that well before cosmetology school. And that came from me saying, why do we check haircuts when we're done instead of setting it up as a template so that it's even right out of the gate and we know it's going to be even? And so, that Amazing. Was one of that. I remember... I've melted clients' hair off with color. I don't know if our audience knows that I do color behind the chair every day. I do. I always have. And but I've had chemical lessons as well. And chemicals, just like scissors, remove hair. And so there's been a couple moments where I pulled out those foils, and the hair that was in the foil was still in the foil, yet it wasn't attached to the head. So
you hear that,
those moments
audience? Too. Even the experts, even the best, make these mistakes. It's totally normal.
It's what leads us to our success. Again, it's what leads us to our epiphanies and milestones.
Absolutely.
Any last words? Go fuck up. Totally. Go fail. Yeah.
Yep. That's how you learn.
Just go.
Any last words for the community?
Yeah, I'd say that's it right there. Yeah, I'd say, never be afraid. Let me back up. Never be afraid is a stupid thing to say, because I'm afraid of a lot of things. And if somebody told me never to be afraid, I'd be like, yeah, right. It's just an immediate feeling I have. But allow yourselves, I would say, allow yourselves to fail, and failure, see it as the key ingredient to your success. Without your failure, you won't find your success. You'll find others' successes by trying to copy them. But without your failures, you will never find your success, and you'll never define the why in that process either. So with those words, my friend, stay hungry, never stop learning, always push it, hang out with friends like Eric that are rad.
Yeah, and come hang out with me.
Go take it on. Go take it on.
We're going to give you a double sound bite.
Woo! It's a party now.
That's right. There you go. All right. So where do you want people to find you? What's your social?
So social is at Travis Parker Hair is my main social page. And then on IG, forgive me. So Instagram at Travis Parker Hair or at Travis Parker Academy. On TikTok, it's at Travis Parker Academy. On Facebook, it's at Travis Parker Academy. And then on YouTube, it's Travis Parker Academy as well.
Awesome.
And we have a big push on YouTube right now. So jump in on YouTube. We got lots of stuff happening on YouTube right now.
YouTube's amazing. All right. I hope they check you out. Thank you, audience. Thank you so much, Travis, for sharing all of your wisdom. It was amazing.
Appreciate you, brother. It's been a blast. Thank you.